following podcast contains spoilers and words like and We watch the thing. We watch the thing. Hello everybody and welcome back to We Watched a Thing. You wanted him, you got him. Back with me again is the wonderful Mr. Sam Hurley from Movie Reviews in 20 Qs. How you doing, buddy?
I see beer people.
Yeah, good little spoiler there, letting people know what we're doing, mate. I like that.
And they walk around not knowing their beers. How you going, Billy? I'm so glad to be back.
Mate, I'm really good, actually. I'm good. Just, living that life, doing that thing.
Nice. Yeah, well, we've recorded this well in advance, so, hey, man, it's crazy that thing that happened, isn't it? Wasn't that crazy?
I know, right. Can you believe the politics at the moment?
I cannot believe the politics at the moment. And those recent sporting results, my God, I did not see that coming.
Me neither. I think, let me look into the future. I think this is coming out like 4 or 5 weeks after we record it. So, yeah, I mean, how about that weather at the moment? We're coming into summer. It's real good stuff.
It is really good stuff. And that celebrity scandal, that person, he or herself, has got themselves into such a predicament.
I see you're a watcher of The Office as well.
What started off as a casual observation has now turned into having my wife and me rewatch every season about 40 fucking times at this point. I can't help it. It's our go-to. We've had a tough day of parenting. I don't feel like watching a movie. Okay, well, let's watch 4 hours of The Office instead. Okay.
I know. I made myself a playlist which just has like The Office, Friends, Family Guy, a couple of other shows. I just hit shuffle on it and I just sit there comatose eating bags of chips until it's time to fall asleep. And it's the best.
Just a quick text to the wife, come scrape me off the couch again, babe, I'm done. Yeah.
So you, I guess quite a while ago now, you and I spoke about Shyamalan's latest effort, Old.
Yes.
And in that conversation, we kind of discussed whether or not The Sixth Sense really holds up. Has he always been kind of a crummy writer where was the wool pulled over our eyes by the performances and the twists and all that? So we thought it'd be fun to go back and revisit The Sixth Sense. When was the last time you watched this film?
I would say that I haven't rewatched this in its entirety since the early 2000s.
Yeah, I reckon I'm the same. I loved this film. I remember seeing this in the cinema twice, and I know that I've seen it at least once since then. But yeah, I reckon we're coming on a good 15 years at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of these films where it's like, you sort of, once you know the twist, it's, I don't know, like, unlike Fight Club, and unlike some other of these films, when you know the twist, it's still immensely rewatchable to go back and watch this. This one I felt like I was done with. I felt like, I know the twist. Yeah, I get, if you watch it again, you don't really, you can see all the parts that, are very obvious that he, spoiler alert for a film that's 27 years old, that Bruce Willis is dead the entire time. Like, you can see that, like it's very well hinted at and all that sort of stuff. But there was a part of me that was like, I feel just done. I'm just done with it.
Yeah.
Just done. Yeah.
I agree. It's funny. On this rewatch, I really thought to myself, you know what? This is a 2-watch film. Like, the first watch is to enjoy it, to have that twist take you by surprise. The second watch is to go back and look at those little hints and be like, oh, yeah. Anything after that, all you pick up is like, well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. What's happening here?
Absolutely.
So we are, of course, talking about The Sixth Sense, which is a 1999 American supernatural psychological thriller written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. It stars Bruce Willis, Haley Joel Osment, and Toni Collette. And what is it about, Sam?
Bruce Willis plays a child psychologist who, after celebrating an award win, a former patient of his breaks into his house and shoots him. We then pick up possibly a year or 6 months or so on down the track, and everything's sort of gone to rubbish for him. His wife no longer speaks to him, and he tries to make amends for failing that kid so hard by finding this other kid who's deeply troubled and basically helping him. And as we discover, that other kid sees dead people.
Yes.
Legitimately.
So this is I didn't actually realize that Shyamalan had made films before this, to be honest. I always thought that this was his debut, which it isn't.
What? Really?
You thought... Yeah, okay, hang on. All right. I didn't even bother keeping the Wikipedia page up because I was like, no, surely I'm the only idiot here.
No, I thought this was debut. Are you about to throw a whole bunch of student films at me, Billy? No one cares about that.
No, mate. No, they are real films. In fact, one of them was even distributed by Miramax.
Wow.
So in 1992, he made a film called Praying with Anger. So that is his directorial debut.
Wow.
And then in 98, he made a film called Wide Awake, which stars Dennis Leary and Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh, household names, those two. They're just the
Household
pinnacle
names.
of acting, yeah.
So, I mean, clearly an actual thing. And yet I, and seemingly you as well, and I guess the rest of the world, I always thought this was his debut.
I sort of suspected he might have had one before this because it feels pretty insane to go, to have Bruce Willis in your directorial debut. I was thinking he must have, like Fincher directed a whole bunch of music videos before he became a director, so he was able to sort of command a bit of something behind him. Yes, I'm filling into that Topher role right now of going on about David Fincher, but at the same time, like I suspected maybe he had made something, but I didn't know for sure. It's sort of obviously put him on the map, it sort of made him the person that everybody started talking about for the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, definitely. And as you and I discussed when we spoke about Old, definitely the film that established his motifs. He was the twist guy after this film. And subsequently, it's all he's done, even through to today. He just can't help himself but throw a twist in.
He can't. And the sad part is that you, as the audience, know that he's going to do that. And so you sit there waiting for it. The other sad part that I've discovered, having rewatched this film, is that he's going to throw a terrible cameo of himself into the film. And now you sit there looking for it. I legitimately did not remember him being in this. And it's hard. Okay, I'll give him this. It takes an incredible amount of talent to be in the same scene as Bruce Willis and look like the unemotional one.
Yeah,
disinterested one. That takes a hell of a lot of talent, especially for Bruce Willis today. Admittedly, it was nice to see Bruce Willis trying back when this film was made. That was awesome. But yeah, M. Night Shyamalan, horrendous cameo. Absolutely horrendous.
I was going to say, I was surprised because I remember this being obviously the days when Bruce Willis was still trying.
Yeah.
I was surprised at how bad his performance was. And I think some of that comes down to the dialogue not being great at times, but the direction's really solid. And there are times where I'm like, wow, Bruce, this is what you're giving this?
Yeah. He's never been known for being a dramatic actor. I mean, he's tried his hardest, but even still in this film, there's moments where you see glimpses of John McClane of like kind of a cheeky sort of, jack of all trades, blah, blah, blah. Like it's just one of the lads type thing. And he can't do drama. That's the thing. He can't do drama. When he's trying to convey emotion with his face, it's, what are you expecting? Really? Like it's blood out of stone. He's got the stoned face. That just doesn't change.
Is this, from your memory, is this the last film where he had hair?
And even then, it was like rapidly escaping itself throughout the entirety of this film. In different scenes even, it was changing its natural position. But I feel like this is the last film I remember him having hair in. But even still, like Pulp Fiction, he's like rocking a shaven head, like mostly shaven head. And it's true. Mostly on the way out then.
Oh, there's one shot in particular where he's got this really thin wispy bit kind of hanging over his head. And it's like, oh, mate, just shave that.
As someone that went bald young, you just give up, man. Deserters must be executed. Get rid of all of them,
But I mean, this is a film that hinges itself entirely. And this is, I think, the ballsiest thing about the production of this movie is that it hinges itself entirely on the performance of a child actor.
Yes.
Like this film does not work without a decent child in that role. And I know that we're all quick to look back and, mock Haley Joel Osment now, but I mean, fuck, this is a solid performance, like really solid.
I will say that. I will say that I sent you a video of what I believe to be Haley Joel Osment's greatest performance, which people, I don't want to spoil it for you, just Google Conan O'Brien Walker Told Me. Just leave it at that, and just do yourself a favor of watching this tiny scene from Walker, Texas Ranger, in which Haley Joel Osment is on. It's phenomenal. But at the same time, like for a young actor in this role, it's really good. Similar to Topher, not a massive fan of child actors. Take it or leave it. You might as well just hire a 20-year-old and put them in there as an 8-year-old, and we'll just go along with it just for the sake
of cutting some overalls. Nobody will notice.
Exactly. Put some acne on him, and like a bit of give him some braces. No one's gonna know. It's for the benefit of getting a good performance. Why not just do that? Why not just throw a 20-year-old in there? But there's something about him in this that he, like, as an 8-year-old or however old he was when he was filming this, like, he must have had no idea what the hell was going on. The kid's reading the script and being told to say these absolute nonsensical things. At the same time, he has to go from like a stoic, quiet, subdued, introverted, everyone's picking on me, to an absolute, psychopath. Like this stuttering Stanley scene. Where the hell did that come from? Wow.
Yeah. So I actually Googled it because I was surprised. I actually think he looks a little younger than he is. He's exactly 4 weeks older than me. So he was 11 when the film came out. So I'm guessing he was between 10 and 11 when it was shot.
Jesus. Well done.
But yes, he is playing, I believe he's meant to be 8. I think they do say that at some point, 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think, that stuttering Stanley scene, there are some really solid moments in this film where he gives a hell of a performance, where you believe that he is terrified. And you're right, he must have had very little idea of what's going on. One thing that's really nice about the film, thinking back and looking at the production, is that unlike some other horror films that rely a lot on special effects, so much of what happens here is physical that at least he would have had something real to react to and look at, which I think helps a lot.
Yeah, the only scene I can think of where he didn't have the benefit of that is the very first scene that we get introduced to the idea of ghosts, which is a whole bunch of voices coming from that cabinet at the top of the stairs.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Which he gets locked in.
Yeah, which he gets locked in, but he walks up the stairs and he can hear people screaming at him, and he just gets told to get locked in there and to start screaming, which, I'm not claustrophobic, but I tell you what, if somebody locks me in a tiny little cupboard like that, when I'm about 8 or 9 years old, I'm going to start screaming my bloody head off as well.
Yeah.
But I will hand this to this film as well, is the fact that Shyamalan knew not to introduce the ghosts concept too early. I mean, okay, yes, Bruce Willis is a ghost the entire time. Correct. That is the first ghost that we see on screen. After that, we get the voices at about 45 minutes in. I actually rewatched this with my wife, made her stop it because I was very surprised that we hadn't had it from so early. But 45 minutes in, we get the voices, and then 55 minutes in, we actually see one of the ghosts, which I thought, like, for a ghost film with less than half your runtime left, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah. It is, actually. And the way they utilize the ghosts is great. Like, they don't all look dead. And that's what makes it work so well, You have scenes that are kind of horrific in other ways. Like, for example, Misha Barton, when she just starts spewing that stuff in his tent. And there's something kind of shocking about it. I think partially just because she's a child and, nobody likes to see children spew. Nobody likes cleaning up children's spew. You have a kid, you know that. It's horrific.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. Having been spewed up on repetitively for a long time now, yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, and there's something so sad about a dead child as well. I just think that that's very, very clever. That, half the ghosts are just people, and that is kind of what's scary about it.
Yeah. Like, even just the subtlety of, hey, do you want to see where my dad keeps his gun? And then, the kid turns around, his head's blown out. You're just like, they're kind of jump scares in a way, but at the same time, they're not forcibly jump scares with quick edits and cuts. And we talked about this during Old, is Shyamalan knows how to linger a camera on someone for way longer than anyone else would. And
that's true.
Scenes with that, with Haley Joel Osment talking to Toni Collette, and it just lingers on his face, and he's trying to explain something to her or like talk to her, and the same with one of that scenes at the end where they just lingers on Toni Collette when he's talking to her about his grandma or Toni Collette's mother, and they're just lingering, and then they'll have slow pans, they'll follow the subject so that it gives you this uneasy feeling, like rather than a traditional film pan or following a subject up and down a hallway or around a corner or something like that. It just gives you this like slow pan of them slightly off center, which Tommy Wiseau did well in The Room, but that was only because he had two cameras taped together and it wasn't intentional. But I can't name any other directors that actually would choose to go out of their way to make these unsettling camera shots. It's really good. I got to admit, there's aspects of this that is like incredibly good filmmaking. At the same time, man, did my score change?
No, I agree actually. And you're exactly right. Like there are a few people who are kind of emulating this style now, and it has become a bit of a thing with your kind of off-kilter horror film. You look at Ari Aster, he does a lot of lingering shots. I think we saw it recently with The Invisible Man doing it really well, just camera lingering for a long amount of time. But as you said, it's amazing how few, in fact, honestly, probably zero jump scares there are in this film, and yet insanely memorable. Like, I haven't seen this film in 15 years. The "let me show you where my dad keeps his gun" is something that I have never forgotten. And in my head, I remember that moment being a jump scare. I remember, I don't remember physically jumping, but I remember being so shocked that in my head that's what it was. And then rewatching it this time where it's actually very slow. He just stands there and says it and then turns around quite slowly and you see the bullet hole.
Yeah.
It's insane how well parts of this film are put together. And I think that this proves the conversation we had recently that, yes, he's always been a better director than he has been a writer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get to the writing then. And as
absolutely.
You kind of alluded to, the change of scores. I think on a third watch, this movie falls down dramatically. Like there are large portions of this film where you just go, well, that really does not track.
It doesn't. And similar to you, I'm going to echo something that you've said on a lot of your guys' reviews, is that this would be a great 90-minute film. This would be an absolutely awesome 90-minute film. It's an hour 50, and admittedly, it sort of takes maybe just a step too long to get to the meat of the second part, which is Haley Joel Osment turning into a superhero that rescues ghosts. And maybe it could have been got there a little bit faster. But you're right, like it falls apart, and it also becomes a film where is the twist that good that it makes up for the entirety of the rest of the film? Like, are you so invested by the end that when the twist happens, when it's all revealed, that you're just like questioning everything you've seen and known? Is that enough to make up for stilted dialogue or bloody Bruno's half-cocked performance, or not enough Toni Collette or Haley Joel Osment, delivering a great performance, but at the same time, unnecessary scenes and characters that are around them that are superfluous that don't need to be there? It doesn't make up for that. It's a tough question, and it's one that, like if you asked me 21 years ago, or 22 years ago when this film came out, this is one of the best films you've ever seen, I would have gone, absolutely, this is great, this is amazing. But that's 16-year-old me who hadn't seen a ton of films and has now watched a bunch more movies, and you actually start to see some of the flaws in these films, and you realize that, man, what was that?
Yeah, I had forgotten, as you said, the kind of second half to this film, which is, as you say, about him learning to help the ghosts, takes a very similar turn to Unbreakable, where Unbreakable, the first kind of hour and a half is, I guess, what you would say the story is. And then there's like, well, and now we have to see that in action. Where he goes and helps someone. And it's a very similar structure in some ways, where, you get an hour and a half of what you'd say is the meat of the story. And then you get this one kind of little side quest where he goes and helps this person out, Misha Barton. And it's just kind of strange. And on a rewatch, the flaws in the film's own logic, right? Like the ghosts, even though he's the only one who can see them, they seem to be physical. Like Bruce Willis seems to be capable of holding things. At one point we see the cupboards open, for example, and we assume it's a ghost. I believe David isn't in the room at that point. That's Toni Collette. But the cupboard's all open. Okay, so clearly they can do things. Is there a reason that Misha Barton couldn't just put that tape somewhere for her dad to find? Like, did we need that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
so she pushed it from under her bed, but is that the range? Is that, like, surely if she can only push things about 20 centimeters, what else you got to do? Just, like, push it 20 centimeters, come back an hour later, push it 20 centimeters, whatever, and just continue it. And you're right, we saw Bruce Willis smash a glass window, or, crack a glass window when he saw his wife hanging out with one of his, with her workmates or whatever and looking a bit flirty. So,
You're exactly right. And that quashes my other theory, because I was just about to kind of, give the film the benefit of the doubt and say, well, maybe they can only perform these physical actions when someone like Haley Joel Osment is around, But you're exactly right. He crashes that window. There's like, the kid's not there then.
Exactly. He's absolutely not.
But the biggest flaw on a rewatch for me is just the logistics around, firstly, there's no way he doesn't realize that he's dead. Like, as you say, they're very careful. They're very careful in not letting you know how long it's been. I'd actually forgotten this. The title at the start simply says The Next Fall, which we don't know when the start of the movie happened. It could be 3 months later, could be 6 months, could be a year. We don't know. But not only has his wife not spoken a word to him in that time, like, we've seen videos of his wedding and all of his friends and stuff around. He hasn't heard a thing from his friends. He hasn't had a single other client.
Yeah.
And then you get to the real crux of it, which is who booked in this appointment for him with this kid, and who is paying him? When he gets in trouble at school and he turns up, who calls him? How does he know to go to the school? Like, none of this stuff makes any sense in hindsight. And it works so well on a first viewing where you're not bogged down in that stuff.
Yeah.
But when you know it rewatching later, you're like, how does any of this make any sense?
Exactly. It's the first time for the mystery, second time for the explanation, third time for the, wait a minute. I'm starting to see some massive holes massive plot holes that my truck is easily going to fall into when I try and figure this film out again. It's just... There is stuff like that. Like, I get there's a throwaway line of like the dead only see what they want, they did only see what they want to see. Like, I know he says that, and it becomes one of these things that obviously the dead are hunting out this kid because he's the only one that seems to be a conveyance between the dead world and the alive world, because they all seem to be coming for him. And Misha Barton travels across town, but then there's another good one where him and Bruce Willis are sitting on a bus. And he basically says to him, wow, she came a long way to find me. And he's like, yeah, she sure did, kid. It's like, how the hell did this 8-year-old kid get on a bus and travel from one side of, hang on, do you know what city this is set in? I couldn't tell. I didn't have it repeated at me 100 fucking times throughout this entire fucking movie.
Yeah, I know.
Philadelphia? Something maybe? God.
Yeah,
but
that's
still,
how you know it's Shyamalan.
You definitely know it's Shyamalan. It's one of those things. It's like if somebody said to me, "Where's Casablanca set?" I'd probably be like, "Have a think about it. Where's any M. Night Shyamalan movie? Philadelphia. I know it."
Yeah, and try give the movie benefit of the doubt. You're like, okay, he's a world-class psychologist. He's just won awards. Maybe Toni Collette booked this appointment in a year ago, and this was the only slot he had free. But how did he even know where to meet this kid? He doesn't meet him at his home. He stalks him to a church.
That's right.
And it's just, on a rewatch, it's like, well, mate, that's kind of not on.
Absolutely. And we all know about the price of medical care in America. Like, I don't care how down and out you are as a child psychologist. Like, there's no way Toni Collette, who's working 2 jobs, is going to be able to afford you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel bad, actually, that we haven't even mentioned Ozzy's favourite gal, Toni Collette. I was shocked at how young she was in this film. My memory of Toni Collette, and this might just be because, as I said, I was Haley Joel Osment's age, so I was a kid. I remember her being an old woman already in this film. She's only in her early 40s now, today. Like, she was 27 when this film came out.
It's absolutely insane, right? Because the mother from Hereditary is also the mother in this, and there's a 20-year gap or so between those films.
Yeah.
And yet they still look the same age. I mean, it's not the same as Paul Rudd. No one else is. But at the same time, or Nicole Kidman in a lot of ways, but like the two of the Toni Collettes, put them side by side, not a lot of difference. You'd say maybe a year or two of aging. Like, it's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. She is probably one of my favourite actresses of all time, and I hate coming on an Australian podcast to say nice things about Australians. So well done, you broke me. But anyway, she's phenomenal, and her performance in this is just such early signs of the greatness that she will go on to have. And it's sad because I feel like she's probably going to go down as one of the best to never win an Oscar, and that disappoints me. But her career's not over yet. Have some faith, Sam.
Yeah, she is. It's funny. I wouldn't say she's underutilized in this film, just because I think what she does with what she has is so great that it just really works. But yeah, I think as a kid, because obviously growing up in Australia, I already knew her from Muriel's Wedding.
Yes.
Which I think is why I thought of her as being older than she was, because she was already a household name for me when this movie came out, like, yeah, it was just crazy seeing how young she was.
Yeah. And to also have a son that age as well, which would imply that she would have had him when she was like 19, which I suppose the maths adds up in a lot of ways. But you're right, like, you're terrible, Muriel. That was, same. That was one of those films that like, okay, yes, New Zealand is devoid of artistic output, hence why my podcast is kind of successful in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's one of these things like, we got a lot of Australian films. We had this. We had, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. We had quite a few of those other films.
Yeah.
So that when some of these actors go on to bigger, better things, Hugo Weaving and Guy Pearce, obviously from Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, but then to see Muriel like pop up in this and be like, wow, this is phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, we were the same. The amount that I've heard Aussies try to claim, Russell Crowe.
You can have him.
Sam Neill. Sam Neill is a big one. Like, he has so little to do with Australia. He's very well and truly Kiwi, but the amount of Aussies who I've heard try to claim Sam Neill as ours is crazy.
This will go down your podcasting history. I've never talked about this in front of anyone because this is quite embarrassing. But some people were talking about celebrities being born in other countries and then claiming that they're from that original country. And I made the mention of Sam Neill was actually born in Northern Ireland, but we all consider him to be a New Zealander. And Sam Neill then quote tweeted me and said, my dad was a New Zealander. My mum was Northern Ireland. I was a nurse or something like that. I was born over there, but I've been raised here my entire life. Thank you very much. Immediately woke up to about 1,000 notifications on my Twitter. I was like, what is this? And I was like, it's because I'd said Anna Paquin was born in Canada but raised in New Zealand. There's a couple of other like sort of famous New Zealanders that were born elsewhere and, raised here. Woke up to 1,000 notifications and people just tuning me out. Like, how dare you say anything bad about Sam Neill? He's a national treasure. I was like, fuck, I'm going to delete my like life. not my Twitter. I'm deleting my life. I'm out,
I forgot that Anna Paquin was a Kiwi. I mean, Fuck the Piano is a good movie.
Yeah, there's a good film. There's an amazing film.
Yeah. Anyway, back to The Sixth Sense, though. All right. So, yeah, you've mentioned that your score dropped. What was your score originally, and what is it now after a rewatch?
I believe that me 20 years ago would have given this like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. It was...
Yeah, it's same. Yeah.
It was just so revelatory, and it was just... I don't know if younger people now would realize exactly how much of pop culture this infiltrated. Like I See Dead People, What is the Matrix, First Rule of Fight Club. These are all the catchphrases, well, not catchphrases. These are all the inane bullshit that me and my friends used to say to each other for no reason, just because, but it was such an invasive part of pop culture at that time that, he's been emulated and he's been parodied. He's had everything done from his work, and he's sort of degenerated himself to never be able to like climb those heights again. So it's hard for me not to go, well, it still occupies a special place in my heart, but at the same time, it's nowhere near a 9 or a 10 or 8. It's nowhere up there anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, it was not only even at the time, like this film remained in the zeitgeist for so long. I mean, even here we are 22 years later still talking about it, and I bet that this episode will get pretty decent download numbers because like it's The Sixth Sense. Like, I believe it's still in the AFI's top 100 films.
Yeah.
Like, but again, has anyone from the AFI rewatched it recently?
Exactly. It's the same with the IMDb score. It's an 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb. How many of those people that scored it originally have gone back, rewatched it, and scored it again?
Yeah, so I agree with you. I actually found this really hard to score at the end of the day because there is so much about it that is so right and so well done, and and it's hung around for such a long time. It's really hard for me to separate, 20 years ago me from today. So I've dropped it down to a 7. I think if I was being realistic, like if I was being real about it, it's probably closer to a 6. But I can't do that just because of how well put together it is. For all of its flaws, it's still a really, really well-made film.
Yeah, if I was considering being a smartass and just saying a 6 for the 6th sense, but I'll give it a 7. As much as I'm belittling it, there is still top quality filmmaking, like you mentioned. Like when me and my wife watched it last night, and from start to finish, we were engaged. And it's if a film can do that, that's at least a semi-positive score. The twist was absolutely out of this world, to the point that I challenge anyone that says that they saw it coming, because I don't believe that. Like, funnily enough, this actually spurred on a lot of my cinephilism, or whatever you want to call it, my love for movies, because I remember sitting in a theater, watching this with my friends, and it was like a sort of like pinball type thing of one after the other of realizing what the fuck was going on. And, there was me and about 5 of my friends, and one, oh my God, and me sitting there, the last one to get it and going, am I dumb? I can't be dumber compared to these guys, And then the ring fell off, it rolled, and they're all sort of sitting there going, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then when it cuts back, I was like, oh my God, he was dead the whole time. And I said it out loud, and my friends were like, finally, So I do have that beloved sort of like love of the film, and that's what made me go, okay, I need to watch every single film now so that none of my friends think I'm dumb and I don't know anything about films. I'm going to consume every movie, so I will give it to that. It did make me a cinephile, especially for these, I love twist films. I love, thrillers and suspense films like this. So still a 7, but I'd probably, if I rewatched it again, I'd probably drop down to a 6 again.
Yeah. Actually, there's one thing that I noticed on this watch that at the time I was like, is that cheap filmmaking or is this okay? You actually mentioned it earlier, the line where he kind of explains, the dead, they don't know they're dead. They only see what they want to see.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually say that at the time. You only hear that in the flashback of the scene when he first tells Bruce Willis he sees dead people.
Oh, right.
And it's like, yeah, I noticed that last night. When he first tells me he sees dead people, he just says, I see dead people. And he goes into it a little bit that, I see them all around and stuff. But those couple of lines, they only see what they want to see and they don't know they're dead. Yeah. You don't actually hear that at that time. You only hear that in the flashback of the scene, which a part of me is like, that's a little cheap, isn't it?
That is a little cheap, yeah.
Maybe if we'd heard it at the time he supposedly said it, maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There is that. There is one thing I also want to say is that stellar performance by his wedding ring, by the way, that I mentioned, that when she drops it and it rolls from under the chair, does a circle and then lands perfectly. I was like, that is a stellar performance by that wedding ring. Never work with kids and animals and never work with jewelry is what I heard. For it to roll perfectly, do a circle and stop, I was like, that is just out of this world.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me once again. Again, I know that you've said this so many times on this show, but tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, just search out Movie Reviews in 20 Qs and you can find me. I'll be out there in the world somewhere on all the platforms, all the podcasting apps. Come along. Our podcast, as I mentioned, we just basically take a film and ask 20 questions about it. It was refreshing to watch this film last night and not to spend the entire time trying to think of what was the biggest dick move in this film or what line from this film I'd hate to hear after sex, because there was a lot of them. There was absolutely a lot of them. But yeah, and thanks for having me on, Billy. I'm always glad to come on here, and I just want you to know, out of you and Topher, you were never second, ever.
Oh, you. Mate, you are welcome any time. Looking at the calendar of when this is actually going to come out, we're only about a month away from Eternals. So
I'm back. I'm back. Yep. Give me back.
Yeah. Yeah. Next week, I'll be joined by the wonderful Julio from the Contrarians podcast, great friend to both of us, and we will be chatting about another classic throwback. We're talking cliffhanger, my friend.
Jesus. Now, there's a cliffhanger to end on. Hey, here's another one to end on. Julio's actually coming on our show. He's coming on to do The Village, another M. Night Shyamalan. So there we go.
Oh,
it all comes together.
There you go.
What a twist.
It all comes to a twist. Because Julio, for some reason, has never seen Cliffhanger. I don't know how that happens to a person with such a fantastic movie. But there you go.
I've got to admit, though, Billy, there's a number of times that I've heard you saying I've never watched this before, and I'm sitting there going, how's a man ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Nah. I don't know what you're talking about.
Never seen Godfather. How's it?
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. In the meantime, if you guys want to get in touch with me, you can do that at wewatchedathing.com or wewatchedathing@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under the handle @wewatchedathing. If you want to help support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/wewatchedathing, and I'll catch you next week.
Go watch a film.
Hang on. And
How are
Tony
you going to
Collette.
forget Tony Collette like that? How are you going to forget?
I know.
Australia's finest actress
I
of
know.
all time.
I did her bad. I'm sorry. I'm
wish I
Tony
did it
Collette.
bad.